my new heater core. I even got my insulation on there. I pulled it off the other old one. It was just on there with tape, and it actually is in pretty good shape, so it's on there. And now I'm ready to go ahead and stick it back in there, and maybe you can kind of watch me here slide it in. I'm not going to guarantee that it'll work the first time, but I'll have to try to do this with one hand and camera in the other. And I think you can kind of see that there. All right, we just go ahead and kind of push it in. It's already started. Now you have to kind of make sure when you're putting this in, make sure you got the tubes in the right place because it's a little off-centered. So let me look in there real quick and make sure I got it started right. Okay, yeah, there I got it started, and all I gotta do now is push in on it and say hello to your new home, and may your hot days be happy with pride that you did this. Make sure this little thing here we talked earlier, push it up, make sure you don't break it because this is your little door that changes the heat to hot to cold. It's easy to snag that and break it. Just be careful with that. And now really all I gotta do is start putting everything together. And I'm not gonna show every step, but I will just kind of make a quick video here of me putting everything kind of back together. We'll see how it works out. And after we put antifreeze in and everything, and enjoy the new hot heat. Okay, I got the cover back on. There's a little actuator and everything. And make sure, you know, you get that on there right. And it snakes up to the top there. And it just pushes on right there. There's a little clip. It kind of clips on. And there's the bottom of it. And now all I got to do is go ahead and hook up my motor there that runs the vent door. Also, don't forget your little spring right there. I'll zoom in a little bit so if you can see that. In case you get your spring messed up, you can kind of see how that goes in there. Little hole right there, and the other end snakes around on that other piece there. And I don't think the light's going to do it justice, but you get the idea. So don't forget your spring. Make sure you put that on there. So if you don't put that on there, then you'll end up having issues with the heat, mixing the heat and hot and cold together. Alright, we got the blower motor back on. I mean, not the blower motor, yeah, well, it's a motor. It's the vent motor, controls the vents. And it's all back on. And now, really, all I got to do is lift the dash up and start bolting everything back together. By the way, there's the blower motor, the fan, and right there is the sensor that controls if you only have the fan blowing on high. That's your little resistor there that will cause that issue, so that's easy to get to. And that's the whole system right there. So looks like we're just about ready to wrap this thing up here pretty soon. Alright, dash is pretty much in. Once I lift it up on it and give it a nice little push, those bolt holes aligned right up, and I put all 3 bolts in there across the dash, and I've got the bolts in the side started, and looks like this dash is in, so that wasn't really too bad. But like I said, you got to kind of wrestle around with the dash a little bit, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. So we'll go ahead and continue putting some more screws in it and put the trim on and everything. And I can't believe this is already done. Really, all I got to do on the outside is hook up the hoses to the heater core. And of course, I got to pop my little trim back on or not a big deal. And also, we got our dust cover on there, our protective cover, so nobody kicks those springs and breaks that actuator. So make sure you put that back on. And we're done underneath here, so that's really cool. We're moving right along. Alright, got all my trim on. Looks really good, even down on the bottom there. And let's see, over here on the driver's side, same thing. Trim's on, nice and clean, just like it should. And got my glove box on. And the inside, believe it or not, is done. So all I gotta do is go outside and raise the hood up and start hooking up a couple of hoses, put antifreeze in it, and check out the heat. So looks pretty good, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Alright, now everything, like I said, is done on the inside. Now we got to come outside. Now, one quick thing. When I did a job on the flush on a Taurus, and it was a 2001 or 2, I didn't have all this EGR crap down here in the way. It's really tough to get your hands back in there, to get in there where those heater core tubes are. So on this model, which is a 2000, I find it's just about as easy, believe it or not, or easier. Just go ahead and pull this intake off. Do yourself a favor if you have a 2000 model and you have this EGR stuff back here, all this tube and stuff. It's really tough to get your hand in there. I tried it, and I couldn't remember if I had done the last job. If it was a 2001 or 2. But I know in 2001 they changed it. They moved all this stuff here. They took it out and they put it up front. So it's a lot easier to get your hand in there. But unfortunately, I have the most difficult engine to work on. Now, it is just as easy. Just go ahead and pop the intake off. It took me 20 minutes to pop it off. And believe me, once you get this intake off, it's much easier to get in there to hook those hoses up the way you want. So I've got everything unhooked here. And I'll just kind of set the camera down. And you can kind of watch me pull it out, I guess. It's fairly simple. I don't know why sometimes designers make things a certain way and they make it so difficult for you to get certain things out. But see, it's already out. And all I got to do is unhook a couple of hoses back here in the back. And just kind of discard this off to the side. And there are a few little vacuum lines here. Just make sure you get them unhooked. Like I should have made sure before. Just take this one off. There we go. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. And I'll show you the intake here in a second. And there it is. But like I said, it's just as easy to take this off. You just got a couple of bolts down here on the bottom. Let me get a light here. You got a couple of bolts on the bottom to take out. One here. This is a 13, and these are 10s. And you got that little EGR on the back. This is what was causing my issue. And look at this mess. See, this is why you can't get your hand there. But now, since I've got this intake off, my light will stay still. I can show you now. I have all this room. I can get my hands down there and work on this heater core and put everything, well, not work on the heater core, but slide those hoses on and clamps, and then basically just bolt the intake back on. This little intake gasket was only $8, so I already had this because I rebuilt the engine, put new head gaskets on it. But make sure, just go out and buy a new intake gasket. If you have this aluminum head, just pop it off. Trust me, by the time you get your hand down there and you're cussing, this can be already off and you can be putting it back together. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this up, and I'll show you what it looks like here in a second. I'll get up here on the motor and kind of get my hands down, and I'll go ahead and hook up the two hoses on the heater core and give you a look at it. While we're on the subject of this this plenum, you can see the back up there. You got a couple of little hoses to unhook, and I got a plug here, and two little vacuum lines that snake on the bottom right there where my finger is. And that's about it. Just kind of look before you get ready to pull it out, and just set it off to the side. But there's a nice look at it from the back side as I get my light adjusted. Now when you go to bolt this back on here, don't tighten up all your bolts. We'll talk about that here in a second when I put it back together, because a lot of times I know guys have trouble getting these bolts centered and started. I usually leave this not quite as tight so I can move it around a little bit, so I can adjust those bolts and kind of center them and get them started. That's way typically it helps you out. It will help you out better that way. Don't just tighten this down tight, because you won't have any wiggle room. But we'll talk about that here in a second. So I'll go ahead and hook these hoses up back here in the back and wrap this up, I guess. Here's a look at it. Got the heater hoses on. You can see there's one clamp on that one there, and the other one is right there. That red stuff you see is a little bit of grease. Helps me slide it on. Now remember, like I said, if you have a 2001 Taurus and newer, you won't have to worry about taking this intake off. But you don't have to, but trust me, it's a lot easier. And everything's bolted on. I got the bolt down there on the, there's a little bolt that goes right there. That holds that on. Actually, it's above it there. Find the light right there, I believe. Yep, that one. And there's one heading back behind some wires right there, but if you watch my other video, you know where it's at. So this is all done, and I just got to hook up the hose over here behind the alternator. There's a tube there, and that in there, the tube goes right there, and it's all done. And all I do is put the intake back on and put antifreeze in and start it up. So this is a little bit of a pain in the butt if you have a 2000 model, but 2001 and newer, like I said, this EGR stuff's not in the way. But yeah, that's how I do it. So we'll see. Alright, get everything hooked up, and there's one hose that goes down to the inlet behind the water pump there. Now I think you can see that little clamp right about there. And I got the one on this side hooked up, which is right there. So everything's done. So I'm not going to bore you with any more details. So all I'm going to do now is go ahead and put the plenum back on. Real easy to do. And like I said, just take a little extra time when you put that plenum on. Don't tighten the bolts up all the way until you actually get these bolts here in the back of it kind of started. Then it's a lot easier that way. And we'll start it up here a little bit. We'll put some antifreeze in it and check out the new heat. Alright, everything's back together. About a half hour. Put everything back. And like I said, it's well worth it to take that intake off there to get into that heater core and those hoses back there. You can see when it's back bolted back on, you don't have any room whatsoever, especially on this 2000. But 2001 on up, it's a different story. You have a lot more room on this side to work on. So I just got unlucky, I guess, and got the hard car to work on. So now we're going ahead and back it outside, put some antifreeze in it and start it up, and we'll check out the heater core, the new heater core, and see how it goes. How it works anyway. Alright, it's all back together, and I've got heat. The temperature gauge is just starting to come up a little bit there, and no farther than it's come up. The heat's really hot, so that's really good to have heat in the car again. So just want to give you guys an update. That took care of the problem. So if you're going to do a heater core, it's not too bad. Like I said, the hardest part is getting those hoses in there behind the firewall out there, and maybe you can figure out a way better to do it, but that's usually how I do it. And depending on what car and what model you got, it's either hard or it's easy to do. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and good luck. And have any questions, I'll try to answer them. But hey, keep warm, because we're going to need it. Looks like we got snow coming, and it looks like we might get 3 or 4 inches. So I'll talk to you guys later.